It happened in late May, one of those Midwestern afternoons thick with the ache of almost summer. The heat hadn't arrived yet, not fully, but the air was swollen with a kind of tension that made everything stick. Sweat, silence, expectation. The high school gym was packed, overfilled with proud parents, bored siblings, and the smothering scent of folding chairs left too long in storage. Rows of aluminum legs scratched against the hardwood like restless teeth. People fanned themselves with paper programs, their smiles brittle, already tired. Teachers stood like sentinels against the cinder-block walls. The principal adjusted the microphone again and again, as if volume might fix truth. I sat near the back. Not hidden, but not obvious either, exactly where years of quiet sacrifice will place you. Linda was up front. She had insisted on saving seats for Mike's father, and not once did she think to save one for me. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I preferred the view from the back, where you can see everything clearly, where you can watch people become who they really are. Mike's name was called. The applause came hard and fast, and the whole room turned toward the stage like worshippers. He looked sharp, black tie, pressed slacks, a haircut that still smelled of talcum powder. His smile had edges. The boy I helped raise had grown into someone else entirely, someone sculpted by hours I had worked, by weekends I had given up, by paychecks I had split in half so he could feel whole. He took the stage like he belonged to it. I clapped. 3 slow, deliberate claps, just enough to be polite, just enough to convince myself I still believed in the illusion. Then the principal spoke. "And of course," she said, "we want to offer special thanks to Mike's real father, who's here with us today, front row, where he belongs. Front row where he belongs." I didn't mishear her. The word she used was real. Not biological. Not parent. Real. There he was, 2 rows from the podium. Crisp shirt. New watch. A smile that had cost nothing but a drive and some time. Linda clapped next to him. Clapped like she was proud to share that seat. Proud to stand beside a man who had spent years as a phantom. My name was never spoken. I sat there, surrounded by strangers, and I felt something small and permanent snap. Not loudly, not with rage, just a quiet rupture in the fabric I had spent years sewing shut. I didn't stand. I didn't protest. I didn't even shift in my seat. I just stared at the back of my wife's head and wondered how many years she had waited for this moment. How many birthdays, holidays, milestones she had quietly wished he would show up and reclaim the family I thought I had earned. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? Reclaiming. Like I had only ever been the substitute, the seat filler, the man who paid the invoices while she waited for the original cast to return. The applause faded. Mike stepped down, diploma in hand. He didn't look at me, not even a glance. His eyes found Linda, then his father, and the 3 of them smiled like a portrait I'd never been part of. Not really. I sat still, motionless. Not because I was calm. I wasn't. But because I understood what was happening. I understood it with the kind of clarity that only comes after years of fog. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a simple, unfortunate omission. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. It was the public rewriting of a private history. A history I had poured myself into until I barely recognized who I was without it. The thing about being erased is that it doesn't happen all at once. No one just stands up and announces, "You don't matter." It happens slowly. It happens in sighs and silences, in the way your name is left off the invitation or mentioned last, as an afterthought. It happens in PTA meetings where you sit alone, in family group chats where your phone stays quiet, in the way Linda started saying "my son" instead of "our son." And now it was happening in front of a crowd, a gymnasium full of people who didn't know me, didn't see me, didn't need to, because this wasn't for them. It was for me. It was Linda's quiet verdict. It was Mike's silent endorsement. And it was the principal's public sentence, read aloud into a microphone that hummed with finality. When they applauded, it felt like a funeral. For the man I had tried to be. I looked around the room, my eyes grazing the parents. The fathers in polo shirts and loose blazers, the ones who coached baseball and grilled burgers and were loved not because they were perfect, but because they belonged. Because they had a title no one could revoke. I had none of that. I had the receipts. I had the bills. I had the spreadsheets saved in folders labeled fall semester, travel abroad, senior year. I had the 3 a.m. work sessions to cover gaps no one acknowledged. I had the notes from Mike's teachers asking for help. I had the calls with the dentist, the missed work for doctor appointments, the college applications reviewed in the quiet of an office he never once thanked me for building. But names matter, and mine wasn't spoken. You think that kind of thing wouldn't matter. You tell yourself love is measured in actions, not words. But in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit for a long time. Words are what last. Actions get forgotten. Money gets spent. But names get remembered. They get printed in yearbooks, said into microphones, written into speeches, carved into memory. And mine was nowhere. Linda didn't turn around. That was what sealed it. She didn't even look over her shoulder. Not once. As if acknowledging me would have ruined the image she had been curating. She stood next to the man who had missed years of Mike's life and smiled like nothing was missing. Maybe nothing was. Maybe I had just imagined it all, the family, the bond, the respect. Maybe it had all been performance. Maybe I had been the one clapping for a role that had never truly been mine to play. I stayed until the end. I watched every student walk that stage. I listened to every name called, every thank you given, every strained cheer. And when the ceremony was over, I waited in my seat until the gym was nearly empty, until the floor stopped squeaking, until the balloons stopped bobbing, until the music died. Then I stood, and I left, not in anger, not in protest, not even in grief. I left in silence, because once a role is rewritten in public, it's no longer an oversight. It's a decision, and I'd heard it loud and clear. We came home late from the ceremony. The house still smelled like the suit I'd worn too long, the starch in my collar clinging to the sweat behind my ears. Linda floated through the rooms, humming. She was still carrying the weightless high of applause. That thin, hollow happiness some people wear like perfume. Meant to impress strangers, not anyone who knows the scent underneath. Mike didn't speak to me. He went straight upstairs, his tassel still swinging from the mirror in his hand. I heard the door close, not loud, but final. I sat at the kitchen table, still in my shoes. I don't know how long I sat there. Time feels different when you've been publicly rewritten. It doesn't tick forward. It sinks. Linda came in, poured herself a glass of wine, and leaned against the counter like she hadn't just applauded the man who abandoned our family. She didn't say anything about the ceremony. Not to me. She talked about the decorations, the lighting, the way the principal carried herself. Nothing about the man who paid for every thread of that celebration. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't even say goodnight. She walked out of the kitchen with her glass, and I stared at the bottle. Still half full, still cold. I opened my phone, checked the usual balances, tuition, rent, allowance, fees. I had memorized the rhythm of my financial bleeding. It wasn't pride that kept me paying. It was something older. A sense of duty, I guess. A belief that what you build with your hands, you maintain with your back. And I had built everything. Not from love alone, from hours. From bone. There were 17 active autopays tied to Mike. 17. School tuition was top of the list. I had it timed perfectly. The next semester payment would hit at 8:12 a.m. Same as always. It was like a tradition. My silent offering. Every quarter, the bank reached into my account and extracted another piece of me so he could stand on a stage and pretend I didn't exist. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger is for people who still want something. What I felt was closer to detachment, the kind of cool, clean distance that comes after mourning. I stared at the screen, finger hovering over the edit button. Then I tapped it. Autopay off. A simple toggle. Like canceling a subscription to a show that stopped being good. I moved down the list. Apartment rent, off. Meal card, off. Books and lab fees, off. Every line was like a string, and with each click, I felt them snap, one by one. The weight didn't fall. It evaporated. I didn't do it in revenge. I did it like a man reclaiming his own name. Like a man clearing out a room he never should have furnished. When I closed the app, I felt nothing. And that's what told me I had finally crossed the line between hurt and done. At 8:12 a.m. The next morning, the silence broke. The school called. A woman's voice, professional but tight. "Hello, Mr. Graves. We're calling to inform you that the tuition payment for Michael Douglas was declined this morning. Our system shows that the account on file has been disabled. Would you like to provide another method of payment?" I didn't lie. I didn't dodge. I simply said, "I'm no longer the payer. You'll need to contact the student's actual family." She paused. That kind of pause you hear when someone scrolls through a file and realizes the story they've been told isn't the one they're living. "I see. Would you like us to remove your name from the billing record?" "Yes." Click. I left the table, made coffee, took my time stirring in the cream. The morning sun cut across the kitchen floor, long and slow. I stood in it like a man finally drying off after years in the rain. Upstairs, Mike was still asleep. Linda was already gone. A shift at the gallery or a brunch with her sister, I don't remember. Doesn't matter. What matters is that nobody noticed what I had done. Not at first. Because when you've paid for everything for years, people stop asking if you'll keep paying. They start assuming it's eternal. Like gravity, like air, like a stepfather's patience. They believe in your sacrifice more than they believe in your name. But systems remember. Banks remember. Emails and alerts and missed payments remember. And by noon, the tremor reached them. First it was the school again, this time by email. The subject line, "Urgent Student Billing Issue." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what it would say. Then came Linda. The first text arrived while I was at work. "Linda, did something happen with Mike's tuition? School says it wasn't processed." I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, "Linda, Michael?" I replied. "Me, yes?" "Linda, the payment didn't go through. They're saying the account is inactive." "Did something happen?" "Me, I turned it off." "Linda, what?" I waited a minute before responding. "Me, I turned off the payments. I am no longer the payer." 3 dots. Then nothing. Then a call. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, another call. This time from a number I hadn't seen in years. Todd. Mike's biological father. He had my number. Of course he did. Linda gave it to him years ago when she thought we might need to coordinate. I never answered then either. But I let this one ring, just to see how long he'd hold on. Voicemail. The message came through minutes later. His voice was awkward. A little too loud. Like a man trying to sound in control while asking for help. "Hey, this is Todd. Linda told me there's been an issue with Mike's tuition. I'm just trying to understand what's going on. Can you give me a call back?" No apology. No introduction. Just confusion that the free ride had stalled. I didn't call him back. That afternoon, Linda came home early. She didn't speak right away. She walked into the house like someone who'd forgotten where the walls were, bumping against things, moving slower than usual. I stayed at the sink washing a mug. "I just got off the phone with the school," she said. I nodded. "I know. You canceled everything?" "I turned off the autopay. I told them to update their records." She exhaled. Not angry yet, just unsettled. "Why?" she asked. I turned off the water, dried my hands. "Because Mike thanked his real father. Because the principal thanked his real father. Because you applauded his real father. Because I was never mentioned. Not once. And if I'm not the father, Linda, I shouldn't be the one paying the bills." "It was just a speech," she said. "They didn't mean anything by it." I laughed, quiet and dry. "No, it meant exactly what it said." She tried to argue, but there was nothing left to debate. You can't explain away a silence. Not when it's public. Not when it's deliberate. Later that evening, Mike came downstairs, phone in hand, irritation already boiling behind his eyes. "School says the payment didn't go through." I nodded. "I told them to talk to your dad." "What?" "You heard me." His face twisted, not in sadness. in disbelief, like someone whose automatic deposit stopped and suddenly realized the money had a source. "You can't just stop paying," he said. I looked him in the eye. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Son, I didn't stop being a man. I stopped being your fool." By midday, the panic had ripened. It didn't start with Linda. It started with the institutions. The ones that don't care whose last name is on the diploma, as long as the check clears. The school sent another notice. Then two. Mike's university portal began flashing red. Balances overdue. Deadlines pending. Access to course registration threatened. Words like academic probation and administrative withdrawal appeared in bold font. Linda forwarded the emails to me, each with no message, no context, just the link, as if the weight of the unpaid debt would pull me back into orbit. But I had severed the tether. I was no longer part of that gravitational field. Then came the call from the financial aid office. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered it anyway, just to hear how they'd try to phrase it. "Mr. Graves." The woman's tone was polite, professional, laced with the tension of someone navigating a sensitive topic. "I'm calling from the Student Finance Department regarding Michael Douglas' tuition account. We noticed that the primary payer has been removed, and there is currently an outstanding balance of—" I cut her off gently. "I'm aware. I removed myself." She hesitated. "Ah, I see. Is there an alternate payer we can speak with?" "Yes," I said. "His real father." A beat of silence. "Would you like us to provide him with access to the account? If he's willing to pay, give him whatever he needs." "Understood," she said, though her voice sounded like it didn't understand at all. By 2 p.m., Linda called me. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice lower now, quieter, like she'd shifted from disbelief to dread. "Michael, can you please call me? This is going too far. The school's saying Mike might lose his spot. Just, please talk to me." I didn't call her back. Not yet. She wasn't ready to talk. She was still trying to fix the fire without admitting who lit the match. Then Todd tried again. Another call. Another message. "Listen, man, I don't know what's going on, but I can't just shell out that kind of money right now. We need to figure something out. Mike's freaking out. Linda's calling me nonstop. Just, can you give me a call? We need to figure something out." That word "we" always appears when the bill lands. Never during the planning. Never during the applause. By 3 p.m., the quiet of my office turned into a steady hum of notifications. Texts from Linda, a long one from Mike, then a new number, probably a friend of his or maybe his landlord. I ignored them all. I was working, for once, just for me. At 3:42 p.m., Linda arrived home. I heard the door open harder than usual. She stood in the hallway like she was trying to choose between a fight and a plea. I didn't move from my chair. "You need to turn it back on," she said, voice trembling with urgency. "I don't need to do anything," I said without looking up. "He's going to lose everything." I closed the laptop and finally met her eyes. Then maybe he should have thought of that before deciding I was nothing. "That's not what he meant." "No," I said. "That's exactly what he meant. Don't give me your name. You're not my father." That's what he said. And now that the money's gone, suddenly biology isn't enough? She didn't answer, because she knew. She had let him say it. Let it land. Didn't challenge him. Didn't even flinch. She sat down across from me, trying to soften her voice. "Michael, he's just a kid." He was upset. It was a stupid thing to say. No, it was an honest thing to say. Stupidity doesn't sound that clear. I leaned back in the chair and folded my arms. "You want the payments back?" I asked. "You want me to pour more into the same hole I've been filling for years? Then I want the truth first. From you." She blinked. "What do you mean? Do you think I'm his father?" "Michael, do you think I'm his father?" I repeated. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, finally, she whispered, "You've done more for him than anyone else." "That's not the question." Her silence gave me my answer. She didn't believe it. Not fully. Not when it counted. Not when the world was watching. I was the man she depended on, not the one she defended. A functional placeholder. A wallet with hands. I'm done, I said. She stood up, panicked now. You can't do this. He's in too deep. This is his future. And I've already paid for most of it. More than I should have. But this is yours to fix. Yours and Todd's. She looked at me like I'd stabbed her. That's the part people never talk about. When you stop giving, they act like you've stolen something. Like generosity is a loan with no due date. Like the sacrifice they applauded yesterday became expected today. I carried that boy, I said quietly. I didn't have to, but I did. Every bill, every form, every hour of overtime. Not because I was obligated, but because I thought I mattered. Because I thought family meant more than blood. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't soften. I raised him like he was mine, and you let him tell me I wasn't. In front of you, and you said nothing. She shook her head slowly. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to defend me. That's the truth. I turned and left the room. 10 minutes later, the front door opened. Mike had come home. His voice was already tight. He was bracing for the argument, not realizing it had already been lost. You're really doing this? He shouted into the hallway. You're just gonna let everything fall apart because of one sentence? I walked back into the living room. He stood there, phone in hand, sweat on his brow, his whole posture radiating disbelief. You called me a stranger, I said. Now I'm acting like one. I didn't mean it. You meant it enough to say it. He stepped forward. You've been my whole life. You paid for everything. You were there. Don't just walk away. I was there, I said. But I was never seen. Not really. I was tolerated. Used. Not respected. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something close to recognition in his eyes. Not love. Not even guilt. Just the slow, creeping realization that the machine had stopped, and he didn't know how to build it back. What am I supposed to do? He asked. I didn't blink. You're supposed to do what every other adult does when the person footing the bill steps away. Which is, figure it out. He left, slamming the door behind him. Linda followed a few minutes later. The house fell silent. That night, I slept without setting an alarm for the first time in years. And when I woke, the weight in my chest was gone. Not joy, not relief, just absence. It was the sound of freedom, the kind that only comes when you finally stop paying to be disrespected. The house turned into a museum of tension. No one spoke. Mike didn't text, didn't come home. Or if he did, it was while I was asleep or pretending to be. Linda moved like a ghost, light-footed, careful. Her eyes carrying the dull shine of someone who couldn't decide whether to be angry or ashamed. She'd glance at me across the kitchen like she was looking for a man she hoped might return if she stayed quiet long enough. But that man was gone, and she knew it. By the third day, the emails stopped coming. The school had made its position clear: no payment, no enrollment. Mike's class schedule had been frozen. His university email was probably flagged with system warnings, tuition alerts, and final notices. I imagined him refreshing it over and over, waiting for something to change without ever daring to pick up the phone and call the man he'd spent years dismissing. Because that would mean admitting who'd really been holding the strings. That would mean looking me in the eye. I sat at the dining room table that morning, spreading a little too much butter on my toast, the way men do when they want the world to feel slower. Linda walked in. She didn't speak. She poured coffee, stirred in cream, sat across from me. I didn't offer conversation. She broke first. He's scared, she said. I didn't answer. He doesn't know what to do. Still, I said nothing, because fear, while uncomfortable, is also instructive. And no one had taught Mike how to be afraid of consequences. That was the problem. We had insulated him from every sharp edge, every overdue notice, every budget conversation whispered behind closed doors. We'd built a padded room around him and called it love. But love without truth is delusion. He called his father, Linda added. Her eyes stayed on her coffee. "He won't help." I finally spoke. "Of course he won't." "You were right," she said. That admission landed with all the weight of a whisper. It wasn't an apology. It was a white flag. The kind people raise only after their shelters burn down and they're standing in the ash. "Mike's been sleeping on a friend's couch," she said. "He still has keys to this house. He doesn't want to come back until I pay," I finished for her. "Until I undo what he earned. Michael, he's 18. He's old enough to know who fed him," I said. "He's old enough to call me by my title when the bills are due, but not when the speeches are made." She said nothing, and that silence was louder than any defense she could have offered. The rest of the day passed without remark. I went to work, came home, sat on the porch with a glass of water that tasted like peace. That night Mike came home. He didn't announce himself, just walked through the front door and stood in the hallway. I didn't rise to meet him. I let the moment hang. He looked smaller than usual. Not physically, just deflated. The arrogance was gone. So was the certainty. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't say sorry. He said, "They're dropping me from the semester." I nodded. "I'm going to lose the credits." I said nothing. His hands curled at his sides. "You really don't care?" "I care," I said. "I care deeply. That's why I stopped." He blinked. "That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense. You don't reward contempt. You don't finance erasure." He shifted. The words made him uncomfortable. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, and I smiled. "Just barely." "I'm not doing anything. That's the point. I stopped doing. You built your world on the assumption that I would never stop. You were wrong." He swallowed hard. His voice wavered. "I didn't mean it." "But you said it." He didn't reply. Linda came into the room holding a towel, pretending to be casual, pretending she hadn't been listening from the kitchen. "Mike," she said softly, "just talk to him. Tell him what you need." But he couldn't. Not fully. Because this wasn't about tuition anymore. It wasn't about credits or balances or online payments. It was about identity. He had stood in front of hundreds of people and let someone else wear my title. Now he wanted the benefits of my presence without restoring the name he stripped from me. So I stood up. "You want your tuition paid?" I asked. "You want your rent handled? Your life put back on autopilot?" He nodded, hesitant, but hopeful. "Then say it," I said. He blinked. "Say what?" "You know what." He didn't. Or maybe he did. Maybe that was the problem. I stepped forward. "Say I'm your father." Silence. Linda's breath caught in her throat. "I'm not asking you to love me," I said. "I'm not asking for apologies. I'm not asking you to erase Todd. I'm asking you to name the man who built your life." He looked away. "I can't," he whispered. "Then I can't pay." I walked past him, into the kitchen, and poured myself another glass of water. Behind me, I heard the front door open, then close. He left again, still unwilling to cross the distance between what he knew and what he owed. And in that moment, I realized something that would carry me through every silence that followed. Respect is not retroactive. You can't erase someone and expect their generosity to remain. Generosity to remain. Generosity to remain. Generosity to remain.